Yellow. Hello, more like I see you guys are taking from Elliot. Hello, it's hump day today. I got up early because I thought maybe we could have some fun tonight on hump day. Thought maybe you guys would like to hump. By that I mean an after dark? Question mark, question mark? Yeah, I'm thinking we should do that today. It's been a while. But hello, welcome back. We are going to continue reading the manifesto for Elliot Rodger. We are reading the whole thing. I don't know that we'll finish today. We might have to do part 3. I'm trying not to make the lives too long because I could really sit for hours and that just not everybody is cut like that. So I won't try to make these too long. So we might do part 3. It might be done in part 3. Welcome back. Thank you for being here. It's freezing where I'm at. I don't know how cold it is where you are, but I'm kind of over it at this point. Let's get started. Hello. Please hit the like button. I know this is an older case, so not a lot of people are attracted to it, but I'm into it. We do have Kenzie later. I'm continuing on Epstein. We have a document to read. I don't know how much we'll get through today, but we'll try. Hello, Vanjie. Hello, Evie, Crease, Gala. Hello. And hello, Joel. Hello to Joel, your son, Vanjie. Shout out to him. And I saw Asani in here, and I saw Ramon. Hello. Thank you for being here. Please hit that like button. It's really a great and free way to support. I would really appreciate that because it is the only way YouTube pushes you out into the algorithm. And although this case is older, sorry, I'm fixing my mic. It still helps. Hello, Suzanne, good to see you. And hi, Tippy. We left off on yesterday. We were reading his 9th year, page 15. Let me take a drink of water before I start. Okay. I can put chat up on the screen while I'm reading. His 9th year. Oh yeah, I know. I was cracking up with your comment. My fabulous, magnificent self is here with my fabulous latte. That's what I need right now is a latte or drink, either one. Okay. Let's see. That actually sounds nice today. Go get a drink. Okay, my 9th year was very interesting, and I went through a lot of changes emotionally. Oh, for the replay viewers and the new subscribers and viewers, if you don't know who Elliot Rodger is, he's the young male who shot up the Isla Vista shootings, and he stabbed 3 people, 6 unalived. He unalived himself. So there's that. Happened, when did I say yesterday? May 23rd, 2014. So it was a while ago. We're rereading the manifesto, although I guess for me it would be reading for the first time. I know some of you have already read it. Let me get to my screen. Sorry. I know you guys can see it, but I can't see it yet. Streaming's being annoying. But what's now? Okay. My 9th year was very interesting, and I went through a lot of changes emotionally and intellectually. It was a year in which I matured to a point where I would start observing the world more conscientiously. Before I turned 9, I was living as a carefree child in a world that I thought was only good and pure. From this point onwards, I would gradually discover more about the world and society. I would face problems and frustrations that I wouldn't even think about before. My life would still be positive and bright, however, and I would live life to its fullest. The first frustration of the year, which would remain for the rest of my life, was the fact that I was very short for my age. As fourth grade started, it fully dawned on me that I was the shortest kid in my class. Even the girls were taller than me. In the past, I rarely gave a thought to it, but at this stage, I became extremely annoyed at how everyone was taller than me and how the tallest boys were automatically respected more. It instilled the first feelings of inferiority for me, and such feelings would only grow volatile with time. I don't know if that's necessarily true, that the taller boys got respected more. Do you guys think that's true? Yeah, please hit the like. It really helps. There should be 10 likes. Um, let's continue. I desperately wanted to get taller, and I read that playing basketball increases height. This sparked my brief interest in basketball, and I would play it all the time during recess and lunch in the upper. Most of the basketball courts were unused, so I would play it by myself or with anyone who would care to join me. During my time at Father's, I would spend hours playing basketball at Father's basketball court, shooting hoop after hoop long into the evening. And I also remember lying on the ground in basketball court, trying to stretch my body as much as I could in between basketball sessions. When I played basketball at school, some boys would join me, and when they did, I saw that they were much better at the sport than me. I envied their ability to throw the ball at the double distance than I could. This made me realize that along with being short, I was physically weak compared to other boys my age. Even boys younger than me were stronger. This vexed me to no end. Wow. My fourth grade classroom was located in the center area of the school, and my teacher was named Miss Jill, who had an assistant named Mr. Devine. Devine? Fourth grade was a strange year due to the emotional problems I would go through, and I didn't have as much fun at school as I did in previous years. In class, I sat near Keaton Weber and I got into a few conflicts with him. We weren't quite enemies, but I disliked him intensely and I would always consider him a foul prick. Wow. He's so angry. By nature, I am very jealous person, and at the age of 9, my jealous nature sprung to the surface. During the playdates with James, sometimes he would have other friends over as well, and I would feel very jealous and upset when he paid more attention to them. Feeling left out, I would find a quiet corner and started crying. My mother and Kim were very understanding and did the best they could to console me. On the rare occurrence that my mother would have Maddie and Mo over for dinner, or if we would go to visit them at their house. Maddie often played with my little sister Georgia instead of me, and this too made me jealous. I remember all the times I cried when this happened. So yeah, his anger towards females started very young. I mean, he's 9 years old here. Jealous and envy, those are the two feelings that would dominate my entire life and bring me immense pain. The feeling of jealousy I felt at 9 years old were frustrating, but they were nothing compared to how I would feel once I hit puberty and have to watch girls choosing other boys over me. Any problem I had at 9 years old was nirvana compared to what I was doomed to face. A few months into fourth grade, it was decided by my parents to change me and my sister's living arrangement yet again. This time, we would be switching mothers between mother's house and father's house each week. Week would be spent at my mother's and the next at father's. This was a fair split. At first, I wasn't so sure about it because I always disliked any change to my life, but I found it to be a better arrangement. This enabled me to spend weekends at mother's house. During her week, I was very excited about this. I've only spent weekends at father's beforehand. During Father's Week, I would mostly be looked over by our two nannies, Rosa and Amparo. They were of South American origin and didn't speak much English, but they were very kind. I started to have intense conflicts with Somaya, his stepmother. I hated the rules she imposed on me, which I believed she had no right to impose, as she wasn't my true parent. I hated how she would force me to drink milk every morning and very foul tasting soup for dinner. I made such a fuss about having soup that she used it as a punishment. Whenever I did something wrong, she would force me to drink the soup. I once had a play date with Philip at father's house, and when I yelled at my sister because she was annoying us, Sumaya punished me by sending me to my room for an hour, embarrassing me in front of Philip. After this incident, I never had a play date at father's house ever again. This conflict with Samaya started a trend in which I would love being at mother's house and dread the weeks I spent at father's house. Mm, On top of the conflicts with Samaya, father was rarely there and he was always out of town for his work. After spending a nice week at mother's house, I would cry when Sunday came and I had to go to father's on Monday. I would then spend the entire week at my father's house looking forward to going back to my mother's. I remember those Mondays when my mother dropped me off at school for the first day of Father's Week. I felt so sad that I cried when I saw my mother's car driving away. Of course, I would hide the tears to avoid embarrassment at school, but I would feel miserable that whole day. I wonder if his dad was really away at work or he was having an affair. I don't know, just a thought. I always had a pleasant experience during Mother's Week. She always arranged plane dates for me because she knew I was too shy to initiate them myself. She always made fun of everything. Or wait, she always made everything fun. My apologies. On weekends after dinner, we would have treat time where she would bring out a box of candles for me and my sister to choose from. Oh, candies, not candles. I'm like, what? This isn't even his journal. No, it's not. It's the manifesto. We are gonna read the journal. Hi, Alicia. I'm waiting inside the doctor's room. Oh, I hope it goes well. Um, oh, really? YouTube's still being weird? Hmm. After the outage. I had a lot of play dates with Philip, and through Philip, I also played with his brother Jeffrey, who was 2 years younger than us. While Philip was calm and mature, Jeffrey was the complete opposite. Jeffrey Bloger was wild and boisterous, which often brought a lot of fun to my play dates with Philip. My mother once had a party at our house and invited all of our family friends. James Ellis came over, and so did Philip and Jeffrey. It was the first time I saw all of them together, and it made for an interesting experience. I got a bit jealous, however, when Philip and Jeffrey seemed to respect and pay more attention to James than they did to me. When we were playing on my Nintendo 64 and I was competing against James, they rooted for James, which really upset me. What the? He got like really jealous about everything. As my fourth grade year teacher approached its end, my little 9-year-old self had another revelation about how the world works. I realized that there were hierarchies, that some people were better than others. Of course, I was subconsciously aware of this in the past, but it was at this time in my life, at 9 years old, that I started to give it a lot of thought and importance. That is wild that he could like recognize that he's like a psychopath. I started to see this at school. At school, there were always the cool kids who seemed to be more admirable than everyone else. The way they looked, dressed, and acted made them cooler. These cool kids, as I call them, included Keaton Weber, Matt, Michael, and Trevor, Zalman, John, Joe, and a few more. They were cool and they were popular, and they always seemed like they were having a good time. The peaceful and innocent environment of childhood where everyone had an equal footing was all over. The time of fair play was at its end. Life is a competition and a struggle, and I was slowly starting to realize it. When I became aware of this common social structure at my school, I also started to examine myself and compare myself to these cool kids. I realized with some horror that I wasn't cool at all. I had a dorky hairstyle. I wore plain and uncool clothing, and I was shy and unpopular. Was always described as the shy boy in the past, but I never really thought my shyness would affect me in a negative way until this point. This revelation about the world and about myself really decreased my self esteem. On top of this was a feeling that I was different because I am of mixed race. I am half white, half Asian, and this made me different from my normal, fully white kids that I was trying to fit in with. I envied the cool kids and wanted to be one of them. I was a bit frustrated at my parents for not shaping me into one of the kids in the past. They never made an effort to dress me in stylish clothing or get me a good looking haircut. I had to make every effort to rectify this. I had to adapt. My first ask my first act was to ask my parents to allow me to bleach my hair blonde. I always envied and admired blonde haired people. They always seemed so much more beautiful. My parents agreed to let me do it, and father took me to a hair salon on Mulholland Drive in Woodland Hills. Choosing that hair salon was a bad decision, for they only bleached the top of my head blonde. When I diligently asked why they didn't make all of my hair blonde, they said I was too young for a full bleaching. I was furious. I thought I looked so silly with blonde hair at the top of my head and black hair at the sides and back. I dreaded going to school the next day with this weird new hair. When I arrived at school the next day, I was intensely nervous. Before class started, I stood in the corner frantically trying to figure out how I would go about revealing this to everyone. Trevor was the first one to notice it, and he came up to me and patted my head, saying that it was very cool. Well, that was exactly what I wanted. My new hair turned out to be quite a spectacle, and for a few days, I got the hint of attention and admiration that I so craved. Frosted tips. Yeah, I know. He wanted to me again. The frosted tips are popular back in the day. Is that still in now? Probably not. I don't know. Um, my interest in Pokemon faded away at this time. In third grade, Pokemon was considered cool and everyone was playing it. Towards the end of fourth grade, I found out that everyone was growing out of Pokemon and the only ones who wanted to play it were the geeky kids. I heard some kids joking about how lame Pokemon players were, and I decided it was time to quit. I talked to James about this. He was still interested in Pokemon, so I gave him my Charizard card as a gift and as an act of my resignation from the game. Pokemon gave me some really happy and memorable experience, but it was time to move on. I saw the a dude the other day with frosted tips. My nephews are like into I don't know why, but you know, like that little like eyebrow slit. That's what's like in at their school. One's in high school, or no, one's in going into high school this year. Just kidding. One's going into the second year of high school, and the other one's going into the first, freshman and sophomore. And they both, I'm like, what did you guys do to your eyebrows? And they're like, oh, we have the little slit. And I was like, why? Are you a gangsta? And they were like, no, auntie, this is what's cool and this is what's in. And I was like, okay. Fourth grade was frosted tips. Yeah, it was. The brow thing reminds me of Vanilla Ice. Yeah, I was like, I'm surprised your parents let you do that. And they were like, we didn't ask for permission. We did it at school. And I was like, good luck with that. Let's move on. It was funny. I then started to notice that all the cool kids were interested in skateboarding. I had never ridden on a skateboard before, but I wanted to be cool. If I wanted to be cool, I had to become a skateboarder. I expressed this to my parents, and my father was glad that I was showing an interest in an active sport. He took me to the store Val Surf on Ventura Boulevard to buy me a new skateboard, and I was fascinated by all the different choices. I settled for a red Val Surf branded skateboard, and they took it down from the wall and built it for me. I was thrilled to have this new skateboard and the possible chance it gave me to be a cool kid. It was time to start practicing. I found it very hard to even ride on it at the beginning, and I spent many hours outside trying to get the hang of it. And that was that. I was now a skateboarder. I thought, though not yet good enough to reveal myself as one to the kids at school, this was the start of an obsession to copy everything the supposed cool kids were doing. Oh my goodness. Part 3, the last period of contentment, ages 9 through 13. Fourth grade ended, and once the summer started, I took a vow to mold myself into the coolest kid I could possibly be by the time fifth grade began. I anticipated the approval the other kids would have for me once I reveal myself as being similar to them, and I look forward to it. After about a year and a half of living in the house on Hatteras Street, I'm butchering that, and Upper West Hills, my father decided to move into an even better house. This time, all of us spent a day looking at open houses together as a family. We went with a real estate agent and examined some beautiful homes around Woodland Hills. My favorite one was a 3-story house on Llano Drive in Woodland Hills Heights, the most prestigious area of Woodland Hills that bordered Calabasas. Oh, and if you know what Calabasas is, it's where the Kardashians live. Um, it didn't have a pool, but it had a sloping backyard almost 3 times as large as our current one. The house had 6 bedrooms, and I took an intense liking to one particular bedroom that had its own bathroom and a personal balcony. My father showed extreme enthusiasm about possibly buying this house, and I became obsessed with getting that particular bedroom as my own room. When I brought it up with father and Sumaya, they said that the room would most likely be Georgia's because it was closer to the master bedroom. They said that I would get a bedroom downstairs as one without my own bathroom or balcony. I was furious and I threw a huge crying tantrum. Soon enough, father went ahead with the decision to buy this house. I made a big deal about the possibility of not getting that lovely bedroom I wanted, and I kept sulking to father and Samaya about it. When they finally moved and the first week of father's at this new house started, I was very anxious. But then, as we entered, father and Samaya surprised me and revealed that they decided to give me the room I wanted. I was so happy. I danced and leaped with joy all over the house. Well, he is older. And then I went to my new balcony and looked out at the beautiful view of the woodland hills for an hour. After the move to this new house, father would never move again, and he still lives there to this very day. I would have many important experiences there for the next decade, both good and terrible. I needed a skateboard from my mother's house too. So my mother took me to Valsurf and bought me a gray Valsurf skateboard, and I would use the skateboard much more than the red skateboard I had at father's house since I had all of my playdates during mother's week. And mother would make more of an effort to indulge in my new interest, eventually taking me to skate parks every weekend. I became very excited about my new hobby, and I shared it with James Ellis and Philip, my 2 main friends. I wanted to get them interested in skateboarding as well. It was tricky to get James into it, but as soon as he got his own skateboard, we would start skateboarding together around his neighborhood. As I now considered myself a skateboarder, I wanted to dress in clothes that all the cool skateboarders were wearing. My mother took me to Val Surf once again, this time to shop for new shirts. I picked out a few that had the logos of skateboard companies on them. Later that day, I put on one of the new shirts and I was thrilled to start going around in it. I felt cool. At my father's house, I was introduced to a new nanny who would be living with us. Rosa and Amparo left back to their home countries a few months before we moved the house. This new nanny was an African American woman named Tracy. She had a very fun personality, and I always had a pleasant time when she looked after us. She was able to drive, unlike my previous nannies, and so she would be the one who would always pick me up from school during Father's Week from that point on. Uncle Dan had a quarrel with my father and he was forced to move out. I would never see him again after that. Tracy would, in a way, replace Uncle Dan as the lodger who lived at father's house. So the father wasn't around. Um, oh yeah, you're right. You're right, Evie. The Menendez boys and families was there from there. Yeah, he's such a brat. So far, it seems like he does get what he wants, right? Um, there's a lot of instability though. I can feel that, like the moving around and then the stepmom and then the constant nannies, and then I could see why it would be a lot, but not enough to go unaliving 6 people. Um, and then so Tracy was basically moved in. So she was probably watching them most of the time. Early in the summer, father forced me to attend summer camp at an elementary school near our new house. This school was Bay Laurel Elementary School in Calabasas. I hated the prospect of and I vehemently protested it. The last thing I wanted to do was spend my summer at a school where I didn't know anyone. I was starting to like going to father's house a lot more after moving to our lovely new house with my exquisite new room. But this decision of father's made me dislike my weeks there again. At my mother's house, I had it my way more often, and that's how I wanted to live. I hated having to go to camp during the summer, and I was miserable at the start. But a couple weeks into it, I made friends with 2 brothers named Thomas and Tyler. On Mother's Week, I spent more and more time practicing skateboarding, and I had lots of play dates with James where we would skateboard together. We also had a lot of fun playing Nintendo 64 games such as Donkey Kong 64, Banjo Kazooie, Banjo Tooie, James Bond, and many more. He also got me interested in collecting beanie babies. At first I thought this thing was very lame. Such a thing was very lame and girly, but we used them to fuel our imagination and have mock mock battles and wars with each other. It was our secret hobby that we told no one about. I used to collect beanie babies. I was relieved when summer camp ended, and once it was over, my 10th birthday arrived. I had been on this world for a decade, and what a decade it was. Full of discovery, fun, and happy adventures. I can't say the same for the following decade. I didn't have a party for my 10th birthday, and I believe I celebrated it during Mother's Week. We went out with James and his family to a restaurant in the Palisades. 10 years old. I was eager to re-bleach my hair to a full blonde color after the disastrous failure of my previous attempt. This time, 𝗠𝗲𝗹𝗆𝗆 took me to the right salon and they gave me a short haircut and bleached all of my hair blonde. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I felt an intense level of satisfaction. I went to James's house soon after I acquired my new hair color, and the look of surprise on his face when he first saw me gave me a good laugh. A couple of weeks later, my hair started to grow and my black hair would show at the roots, but the blend turned out to suit me well, and this would become my new hairstyle for the next year. Mother took me and my sister on a short vacation towards the end of summer. We drove up the 101 freeway to Ventura, where we would stay at the Holiday Inn, which has now been replaced by Crowne Plaza. I found the hotel to be comfortable and luxurious. It was located right on Ventura Promenade, a beautiful walk along the beach that led to a long pier. At this stage, I was very enthusiastic about my new interest in skateboarding, and I took my skateboard with me. I enjoyed practicing on my new skateboard all along the Ventura Promenade. During this trip, Mother took me to my first skate park, which was called Skate Street. It was humongous, and I was awed by all the towering ramps. I attended a beginner's class, and the instructor taught me the basis of riding on these ramps. I absolutely I was absolutely terrified at first, but by the end of the class, I was able to go up and down on the smallest of them, and I had a blast. When we got back to the hotel, we had a nice room service dinner, and then the three of us watched the movie Finding Nemo on the hotel television. It was a lovely trip. Before fifth grade started, I went with my father and 𝗠𝗲𝗹𝗆𝗆 to a dinner party at their friend's house. I forgot whose friends these were, but it was a nice house in Beverly Hills. There was lots of guests, and I did what I usually did at dinner parties, sat around eating snacks and talked with my sister, sometimes going to father and to ask for a sip of wine. During this party, I found myself having a conversation with Father, 𝗠𝗲𝗹𝗆, and one of the party guests, a boisterous middle-aged man who I can't recall the name of. Father and 𝗠𝗲𝗹 were talking about how I just turned 10 years old, and we discussed life and what the future had in store for me. This man we were talking to, he patted me on the back and told me that I have a great life ahead of me. With a grin on his face, he told me that, quote unquote, in the next 10 years, you'll have a great time. Great time. I had no idea what he meant by that. I wasn't even thinking about my future at this point. I was living in the moment. Remember his dad, hey ATS. Remember his dad was like a director in Hollywood. He directed Hunger Games. Is it me or he writes like I hear it in an English accent? Yeah. Um, I agree, Evie. Well, they're like British, right? Yeah, I think they are. Now I know what he meant. Childhood is fun, but when a boy reaches puberty, a whole new world opens up to him, a whole new world with new pleasures, such as sex and love. Other boys will experience this, but not me. It pains me to say that it pains me to say that is the basis of my tragic life. Hmm. I will not have a great time in the next 10 years. The pleasures of sex and love will be denied to me. Other boys will experience it, but not me. Instead, I will only experience misery, rejection, loneliness, and pain. At the time, at the moment in time, I didn't think much about this man's comment. I don't even remember who he was. But after those 10 years have passed and I've experienced what I've experienced, I can't help but think about that moment. If only I knew what was in store for me right then and there. It was time to begin fifth grade. It started out excellently. My teacher was named Miss Damar, and she would always be very kind to me. For the first week of fifth grade, I was at my mother's house. I considered myself to be very cool by now. I had gotten better at skateboarding, I had blonde hair, and I dressed like a skateboarder. I felt great anticipation for what the cool kids would think of me once they saw my transformation. To my disappointment, no one really cared. They were all in their own worlds. I don't remember any kids showing recognition of my new coolness. Eventually, I was regarded differently than I was in fourth grade, which I became content with. The cool kids talked to me more, and I started to hang out with them during recess and lunch. When Father's Week came, I felt frustrated because I didn't have enough cool clothes there, and it took a while for me to get Father to find the time to buy me some more. Mother always got me what I wanted right when I wanted it. At Mother's house, all of my needs were met with excellent precision, whereas at Father's house, there would always be a time delay because Father and Sumaya had less time for me and paid less attention to me. Shortly after my fifth grade year began, my mother decided to move out of the red house to a small house in Woodland Hills. This new house was located on Topanga Canyon Boulevard near Dumet Street. Father's house was just up the hill from there, so it was practically walking distance to Father's house. I would miss the red house despite its smallness and the fact that I had to share a room with my sister. I had some very good times there. This new house was more convenient. It was still a two-bedroom house, but one room was big enough to be split in two, and so by having a wall built in the middle, my sister and I each got our own room. As I got better and better at skateboarding, my mother made an effort to take me to the skate park every week. By now, skateboarding wasn't just a sport I was doing to copy the cool kids. I was truly interested in the sport. I even had hopes and dreams of becoming a professional skateboarder. That became my life goal. I loved skateboarding so much, I pictured myself doing amazing tricks in front of the cheering crowd, just like I saw Tony Hawk do in some videos. I pictured the admiration on their faces, and it was awesome. Wow, I didn't know he loved skateboarding that much. The skate park my mother took me to was Northridge Skate Park, and she would take me there every Friday. I mean, what's so disturbing? He wasn't trying to have sex at 9 or 10, was he? Like, it seems like he's living a pretty okay life. Just the fact, I guess, the lack of his dad being around. But the skate park, okay, so it was Northridge Skate Park, and she would take me there every Friday. Northridge Skate Park was an average sized outdoor skate park with fine wooden ramps. First, we would have dinner at the Northridge Mall, and then I would sign up for the 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. session at the skate park. I usually went alone, but after a few weeks of going, I made a few acquaintances there, and people knew me. This became a Friday tradition during Mother's Week. On the following Saturday, James usually came over for a sleepover. We would play Nintendo 64 games like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and Donkey Kong late into the night. And then on Sunday morning, Mother would take us both to Skate Lab, an indoor skate park in Simi Valley. James had become really interested in skateboarding too, or so I believed. I was always better at it than him, and I liked it that way. This was the way every weekend when we went during Mother's Week, and I had the time of my life. I was so interested in skateboarding that I took my skateboard trick-or-treating for Halloween. My costume, of course, was a myself as a skateboarder. We went to the Lemelsons for a nice dinner and then set out to collect our candy. It was quite tricky to hold a bag full of candy while skateboarding, but I had fun. I remember teenagers seeing me on my skateboard and saying, "Why didn't I think of that?" Ha, that was gratifying. For Christmas, my mother bought me a PlayStation 2. I had been wanting it for a long time, and when I unwrapped the present and saw the box, I felt so elated. Beforehand, the only video game console that I played was Nintendo 64 and Game Boy, if it counts. The PlayStation 2 was more advanced in graphics, and it amazed me. When mother announced that I would have to share it with my sister Georgia and that I can't keep it in my room, my excited turned to indignation, and I threw quite a tantrum. After crying for a bit, I calmed down and settled to sharing it with Georgia. She wouldn't be using it much anyways, I told myself. Even after getting a PlayStation 2, I still played my Nintendo 64 a lot because I loved the games I had for it, and I had an emotional attachment to it. The Nintendo 64 was the first video game console that I played, and I would always have a special place in my heart. One day during winter break at father's house, father and Sumaya went out for a few hours and left me and my sister with Tracy. When they came back, they had a little puppy with them, and and they announced that it was our new pet. It was mainly a present for Georgia. Georgia had been desperately asking father for a pet puppy for the last year, but I didn't think he would actually go through with it. I was so shocked that we now had a dog. I was always afraid of dogs when I was little, and I never imagined having one as a pet. The only pets I previously had were my turtle and my iguana, who both died within a year of acquiring them. Georgia was given the choice on what to name the puppy, and she named it Lucky. I thought this was very lame and a stupid name. I loved game games. I loved my Nintendo 64. He always cries. Yeah, he does. When I returned to school after the winter break, I noticed that all the cool kids had another interest. Hacky sack. Hacky sacking? It was simple sort consisting of kicking a bean sack into the air as many times as you can without it landing on the floor. They all had hacky sacks and they would spend recess and lunch kicking them with each other since skateboarding wasn't allowed on school grounds. I didn't have a hacky sack and I decided that I needed to do something about that. Mother took me to the store Pac Sun where I got a hacky sack with an orange and green design. When we got home from the mall, I started practicing it. I remember struggling with it at first, but I spent the next few afternoons concentrating on getting good at it. I spent many hours well into the night practicing in my backyard. Once I was able to kick the hacky sack properly, I made a big deal of the fact that I was now interested in it. I would go up to the group of cool kids and show off my skills, and I played it with every single minute I spent outside during school time. The upper playground was rebuilt over the break, and there was a brand new playground to play on. I always loved brand new things, and the new playground was quite engaging. On the very first day that we were allowed to use it, I played tag with Philip, Addison, Bryce, and a few others. I never really became good friends with the so called cool kids, and I would see them more as competitors than friends. During recess and lunch, I mainly played with Philip and this little clique, which consisted of Addison, Kevin, and TJ. I made a few fourth grade friends through hacky sacking, though I forget their names. I mainly played with them during recess and lunch. One day, after I stayed an hour after school at the upper, I was hacky sacking with them and I kicked my hacky sack up onto a roof. It wasn't the ver- it wasn't it wasn't first hacky sack, thank goodness, but I was quite fond of it and I was sad to lose it. I wonder if it's still up there. No, it would have been cleared away by now. I still refused to any playdates when I was at father's house due to the incident with Samaya in fourth grade. Because of this, my father and Samaya became concerned that I didn't have any friends. Samaya forced me to befriend some of the neighbors' kids who lived just down the street. They would often skateboard outside of their houses. I was aghast. The prospect of walking up to a bunch of kids who I didn't know and asking to play with them was terrifying to me. They were cool skateboarders, and that made it even more intimidating. Of course, I wanted to be friends with them and join in on the fun, but I was too scared that they would think I'm weird. I have always been shy by nature. So Maya didn't understand this and she gave me no choice in the matter. She sent me out of the house and wouldn't let me back until I introduced myself to them. I tried pretending that I was playing with them, but instead I would hide it in the quiet street corner. To my surprise, Samaya somehow knew I was doing this and she came to confront me. She then got Tracy to take me down to where the kids were playing and pushed me into it. Tracy went up to the kids and asked if I could play with them. I felt embarrassed and timid, but they welcomed me. Always had the subconscious preconception that the coolest kids were mean and aggressive by nature, which is quite true. And I was shocked that these kids were being nice to me and letting me play with them. After a fun afternoon skateboarding around the streets of Woodland Hills, I regretted not befriending them sooner. They went to Woodland Hills Elementary School, the school my sister would soon go to. A couple of weeks later, Samaya forced me to befriend yet another group of Woodland Hills kids. The second group lived near my house and they weren't skateboarders. However, they liked riding bikes and scooters. One of them was a black boy named Lucky who I thought was very nice at the time. I found it strange that he had the same name as my dog. He was a fourth grader and he would later go to the same middle school as me, where he would become an object of my extreme jealousy and hatred. Looking back, I can't believe I actually played with him as a friend in my father's neighborhood. Oh, whoa. So him and Lucky start having problems. Is Lucky a bully? Yeah, abuelitas. Um, I bet he kicked the dog. Oh my gosh, I can't read it. If he did. Oh, it's cute, abuelita. In the spring, Uncle Johnny and his cousins came to stay at my friend's house. Cousin George bunked with me in my room, and the two of us became instant friends. I hadn't seen him since my last trip to England, and back when we were little kid, and back when we were little kids. I enjoyed having a friend to play with on a daily basis without having to arrange a play date. And the week that they stayed with us was great fun. I once took him along to play on scooters and skateboards with the neighbors' kids, and we also went to the beach a lot. Instead, it was a great week. Indeed, it was a great week, and I was sad to see them go. I look forward to seeing him again when we were to go on our vacation to France and England in the coming summer. After Johnny and the cousins left, Sumaya's mother, Khadija, came to stay for a few months, and I was made to share my room with her. Because father had converted two of the guest rooms into his office, and Tracy was staying in the downstairs room. I had an extra bed in my room, so I suppose it made sense to them. I was a bit annoyed with this at the start, but I bonded well with Khadija, so I soon became okay with it. She was like a third grandmother to me. My mother gained tickets to the red carpet premiere Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. We received 4 tickets. Georgia was old enough to go, and I persuaded my mother to let me give the fourth ticket to James. I was awestruck by the time the movie ended. It found it to be I think it's maybe he meant I. I found it to be absolutely phenomenal. James and I talked about it for hours afterward. My life was starting to become mediacore again, and I became frustrated with the struggle to be cool. I didn't have a regular group of friends who I always played with. I was like a nomad, moving from group to group and trying to fit in with each one, but never fully integrating. I feared that the cool kids didn't regard me as one of them, and even Philip's clique never considered me one of their core friends. Despite all of my attempts to be cool, I didn't feel as if the other kids respected me as such. I was still quite the outcast, as I will always be. My social life had changed somewhat when Miss Damar announced that we would have new seating arrangements in class, and the process of deciding on who where was up to us. Our class consisted of tables that seated about 5 to 6 people, and when our name was called randomly, we would choose anywhere to sit, meaning that everyone had a chance to sit with their group of friends. I didn't have a core group, so I was thrown into a state of panic. Originally, I was sitting at the table where Philip's clique sat, but all of their names were called before me and and I was booted from their table. At this point, I just chose to sit anywhere, and I ended up sitting next to John Joe. Matt, Matt and Danny also sat at our tables. These were kids who I regarded as cool, so I was content with sitting with them. I never really interacted with John Joe that much in the past. He is one of the biggest jerks of the school, next to Trevor and Keaton. We quarreled a bit at the start, but soon enough we started socializing, and I talked with him about some new games I got for PlayStation 2. We became friends when John Joe suddenly asked me if he can come over to my house. I felt happy that he asked me this. It would be the first play date I would have without my mother arranging it for me. This would spark a fun new friendship that would last well after 5th grade. The random seating arrangement next to John Joe was the best thing that could happen to me in elementary school. How he remembers this is all in such detail is wild. Despite my struggles to be regarded as cool and my obsession with attaining such recognition, 5th grade was my favorite school year in elementary school. I played with more people than I ever did the previous grades. I was less shy. I wasn't a dork, and I had an awesome time learning how to skateboard and hacky sack. It was a memorable year filled with joyful experiences. I didn't want the school year to end. Once 5th grade was over, I will have to go to middle school, and the prospect filled me with much anxiety. My little innocent mind always looked at middle school as something far in the future when I grow up. I didn't want to grow up. I was enjoying my life as a kid at the right moment. I didn't think about the future. Kids in my class told many rumors about middle school life that filled me with fear and sent a shiver through my spine. Even though watching movies and TV show and TV, even through watching movies and TV shows, I got a glimpse for what was in store for a middle schooler. There was talk of girls and how it would soon be cool to be popular with the girls. Girls were like completely foreign creatures to me. I never interacted with them. I wasn't expected to. In elementary school, boys played with boys and girls played with girls. That was what I was used to. That was my world. I heard stories of how boys are expected to start kissing girls in middle school. Such things overwhelmed me. I tried to dismiss it as much as I could and enjoy my life in the present moment. I don't miss middle school. Um, my school or high school. My school arranged a camping trip for the entire fifth grade class before graduation day. At first, I didn't want to go because I would be away from my parents for 5 days, something I was never used to. I was afraid I would get homesick too. I never spent more than one night away from my parents. On the rare occasion they had to go out of town for a few days and left me with the nanny, I would cry at night. My teacher, Ms. Damart, came up to me one morning before class started and persuaded me to go, saying that the graduation trip was something I wouldn't want to miss. It was a once in a lifetime experience, and after some hesitation, I agreed to go along. I forgot exactly where this camping trip took place. It was located at a special camping retreat somewhere in the forest to the north of LA. It was very secluded, a small village of cabins and tents surrounded by wilderness and hiking trails. For the trip there, I decided to go with my friends Bryce and Charlie in a car instead of taking the school bus with everyone else. This was much more comfortable, and I was glad to have snagged a spot in the car with them. Everyone was assigned to of five to share a cabin or tent. I was originally placed in the group with Charlie, Bryce, and a few others, but that group was given a tent to sleep in. I was appalled by how drab and uncomfortable the tents looked. I wanted a cabin, so I went to my teacher and asked to be transferred to a group that was sleeping in a cabin. She placed me in a group of some smaller skateboarder kids, including Michael, Sam, Trevor, Matt, and Steven. I felt a sense of pride to be a part of this group. During the daytime on this trip, the whole fifth grade class participated in games, outdoor activities, nature hikes, and barbecues. It was great fun. Nighttime in the cabin was like having a sleepover with five people, and it was a new experience that excited me. Before bedtime, Michael Ray took out a magazine that had pictures of beautiful model women, and all of the boys gathered around and looked at them. So, even at the early age of 10, boys were starting to be attracted to the female body. I didn't understand this. I hadn't yet reached that stage. I pretended to be interested just so that I wouldn't appear uncool. All of the boys probably lost their virginity by 16. Damn them. The trip ended up being so fun that I didn't cry at all about being away from my parents for so long. Answer me, I'm going to dye my hair blonde and go cry in the corner. I know. I know. And finally, it was time to graduate from elementary school. Before the ceremony, our whole class watched a video full of footage of school life throughout the year. I saw a few glimpses of myself caught in the footage, and I felt gratified. My life at Topanga Elementary School was a blast, a full of memorable experiences and wonderful times. I dressed in a nice shirt with a tie for the ceremony. All of the fifth graders lined up and walked down an aisle through the center of the auditorium with the audience of parents and siblings on either side. When I saw my parents, they looked so proud of me. Each student had walked up to their teacher on the stage and received a graduation award. We weren't required to give a speech to my relief. I would be too nervous to talk in front of an audience. The graduation theme song was Time of Your Life by the band Green Day, one of my favorite bands. Green Day, I would Green Day, one of my favorite bands. Yeah. Whenever I would hear this song again, I would think about the glorious day, and the memories would make me feel an extreme sense of nostalgia. I was going to say Green Day was a shit back then. I used to love Green Day too. Um, in the afternoon, there was a graduation party at the top of the Topanga Community Recreation Center, a lovely place that provided a view of the whole valley. My mother took me to have dinner at a sushi restaurant, Kabuki, afterwards. It was just me and her. We sat down at the restaurant after all the excitement. I took a moment to fully ponder over the fact that elementary school was all over. It was done. I felt so accomplished and proud. I was happy things were good. But along with that happiness was that feeling of sadness that will be leaving, that I will be leaving all of those experiences behind. A whole chapter of my life had just passed and a whole new one was beginning. That day was such an extraordinary day, a day to remember, a memory to cherish. For the first few weeks of summer, mother arranged playdates with various friends and acquaintances I made from Topanga Elementary, including Trevor, Matt, Charlie, John Joe, and Philip. It was interesting to have Trevor and Matt over. I never thought I would have playdates with them. Matt was one of the coolest kids in the school. He was a skateboarder and a baseball player who seemed to garner respect from everyone. I envied him during elementary school when we were friends, and I would deeply envy and hate him later on in life when I find out how much success he would have with girls. How creepy. Yeah, Green Day and Fall Out Boy were popular too when I was younger. His jealousy really is what sent him into these rage. It's really sick. Again, I repeat that as children, we all play together as equals in a fair environment. Only after the advent of puberty does the true brutality of human nature show its face. Life will become a bitter and unfair struggle for self worth, all because girls will choose some boys over others. The boys who girls find attractive will live pleasure filled lives while they dominate the boys who girls deem unworthy. Matt will go on to live a life of pleasure. Girls will throw themselves at him, and I will go on to be rejected and humiliated by girls. At that moment in time, we were just playing together as children, oblivious to the fact that my future will be dark and his will be bright. Life is such a cruel joke. My mother continued to take me to Northridge Skate Park every Friday, and I also attended a skateboard camp at Pedlo Skate Park for a few weeks. At this camp, I bumped into one of the kids I played with around father's house. I had been trying, wait, I can't remember their names. I had been trying to very hard to get better at skateboarding, but when I saw there was boys a lot younger than me who could do more tricks, I realized that I sucked. I was never good at sports or any physical activity, and when I discovered skateboarding, I thought, finally, here was a sport that I could excel in and become a professional at. It crushed me a little inside to see that I was a failure at skateboarding after more than a year of practicing it. I could never master the kick flip or the heel flip. All I could do was the ollie jump and ride down a few ramps. I saw 8-year-old boys at the skate park who could do a kickflip with ease, and it made me so angry. Why did I fail at everything I tried? I asked myself. My dreams of becoming a professional skateboarder were over. I felt so defeated. Because of this, my interest in skateboarding slowly faded away during summer. James had recently told me he was no longer interested in the sport, so I no longer had him to skateboard with anyway. I just decided to forget about it for the moment. James' family moved to a new house in Malibu. The house was owned by the Lemelsons, and they were staying in it temporarily. Mother took us there a few times, where I adventured with James in the wilderness area that surrounded the house. We would often go to a small plaza in the center of Malibu. There was a playground there with a few shops and restaurants surrounding it. It was time for my 11th birthday. I was at mother's house and just decided to have a small play date for my birthday. I invited James over along with another kid who I'd befriended at the Woodland Hills Recreation Center. My mother made a small cake. I blew out candles, and that was it. I was 11 years old. Hey, Jenna Gypsy, good to see you. Green Day still puts a great concert onto the state, really. Um, okay, so now we're going to start the section of 11, his 11th year. The trip to France and England began shortly after my birthday. We had been talking about it for a while at father's house, and I was really excited to go. We traveled on Virgin Atlantic upper class. I was extremely enthusiastic about this as I always loved luxury and opulence. We stopped by in England for a couple of days to say hello to Grandma Jinx. The cousins weren't there, they were already in France, so it was a bit boring. When we arrived in France, the feeling of wonder and curiosity swept over me as it did when I visited a foreign country. The last time I was in France, I was only a few weeks old. This was the first time I was able to truly experience the country. France was a whole different world, and it was a world that I liked. French culture is so exquisite and refined compared to the American culture. After booking a couple of rooms at a small inn near the town of Toulouse, we met up with Johnny and the cousins at Aunt Jenny's house. Aunt Jenny is my father's sister, and the last time I saw her was when I lived in England, before the move to America. She had a few kittens in her house that I loved to play with. Georgia, George? Oh yeah, George and I immediately resumed our friendship that started in the spring. There was a vast forested area surrounding the house. George told me there was lots of wild boars in the forest, so we went wild boar hunting. It was just a game, and we never ended up seeing any boars at all, but the suspense of possibly finding one was what made it fun. We stayed in Toulouse for about a week, and then we said goodbye to the relatives and set off to tour the country. We toured many cultural towns and stayed in castle style hotels. This should have been a great experience for me, but my conflicts with Sumaya soured it. There were a few incidents in which she punished me by making me stay in a hotel room while she, father, and Georgia all went out to dinner at a restaurant. I hated her for this. On the way back, we stopped at Grandma Jinx's house in England for a week. The cousins were there this time, and it was a lot of fun. We all slept in one room, so it was like having one big sleepover. One day, we went on a trip to a museum where we had an argument with Sumaya. She shouted at me in front of George and threatened to punish me. This was so embarrassing that I fell into a miserable mood for the rest of the day. I always loved traveling, but I learned that traveling with Samaya just ruins the whole experience. And this wouldn't be the last time I was forced to travel with her either, to my utmost dismay. The last trip lasted 3 weeks in length, the perfect length and time for a vacation, in my opinion. I quite enjoyed it if I don't count the times Samaya ruined it. It does kind of seem like I don't think she's picky. I think she just monitors him more and I don't know, but she does kind of seem like she bullies him. He gave up. That's why everyone dips in his life. We must pull your bootstraps up and start stepping. Yeah. You're talking about Elliot, abuelitas? uh Snoop Dogg. Oh, Pepper. I was like, what? Um Okay, let's see what happens. I'm curious to see what happens with Samaya. If and the dad. It felt nice to be back home after a long cultural vacation. At father's house, my nanny Tracy got into an argument with father and she was forced to leave. I was so sad to see her go. She was always pleasant and fun to be around. Once Tracy left, Georgia and I would no longer have any nannies. We were old for it. I wasn't a little child anymore. Having nannies became a thing of the past. From now on, if father and Samaya had to go out to a dinner party, they would just hire a babysitter to look after us. And soon I would be old enough to stay by myself in the house. I got a haircut, and this time I decided not to bleach my hair blonde. The black hair always grew out anyways, so the full blonde look only lasted for a couple weeks. Having blonde hair seemed to have lost its spark, so I just didn't bother with it anymore. The summer was pleasant and relaxing, but it quickly came to an end. The time for middle school had come. My fear of this day haunted me, haunted the back of my mind all summer. I was enrolled at Pinecrest Middle School for sixth grade. I had mixed feelings about going to the school because I didn't like my experience there during kindergarten. Father said it's the best option for me because it was a small private school. I didn't want to go to a large school like Hale Middle School. That would have been too overwhelming for me. Yeah, he's definitely like not socially comfortable. On the first day, I was shaking with anxiety and fear. I didn't know what to expect. Transitioning to middle school was a big deal for me, even more than starting elementary school. I was much older and I cared more about what people thought of me. I was no longer an innocent child who didn't have to worry. I had to worry about a lot of things. And oh, did I worry? It was a whole new school full of people I didn't know. They all previously went to elementary school together, so most of them already knew each other. That made me even more nervous. The only person I knew who was going to Pinecrest was a geeky kid named Nate, who I didn't really interact with that much in Topanga. I also felt an intense fear of what middle school life would be like. I didn't know how to act around girls. I didn't know what was cool anymore. I had no friends there. I simply didn't know what to do. I felt like I was walking into a snowstorm without a coat. My parents led me into the school to say goodbye, and then it was time for me to start my first class. I've just oh, it went away. I had to take I had to take multiple classes with different teachers. This was also a new concept for me, and it made me extremely uncomfortable. Since this was a private school, I had to wear a uniform, something I hadn't done since going to Dorset House in England. I thought of this as a good thing, though. Didn't have to worry about what I would have to wear on the first day. For the first few days, I withdrew into a defensive shell and didn't really talk to anyone. I did I did observe, however. I observed how everyone acted, who the cool kids were, what they were like, and it was also intimidating. The social challenges that I faced in fifth grade were intensified tenfold. Yeah, he's socially challenged. It's weird though. I don't get why because yeah, yeah, we are Ramon. But this isn't his word. I think he makes up a lot and exaggerates. Yeah, I think so too. I noticed there was two groups of cool popular kids. There was a skateboarder kid such as Vinny I thought I couldn't pronounce that name, but that's the last name. Vinny, Ashton, Daryl, Wes, and Alex. And then there was the boys who were popular with girls, including Vincent, Robert, and Oren. They all seemed so confident and aggressive. I felt so intimidated by them and I hated them for it. I hated them so much, but I had to increase my standing with them. I wanted to be friends with them. I also observed the girls. I was very short for my age, and most of the girls were taller than me. Why, what time did I schedule that at? I didn't even think about that. Oh, I see. Thank you, Ramon, for letting me know. I also observed the girls. I was still very short for my age, and most of the girls were taller than me. I hadn't reached puberty yet, but I was starting to admire female prettiness. There was one group of pretty popular girls, and they all seemed to like hanging out with that boy, Robert Morgan. I didn't yet desire girls sexually, but I still felt envy towards Robert for being able to attract the attention of all the popular girls. What was so special about Robert Morgan? I constantly asked myself. I thought all of the cool kids were obnoxious jerks, but I tried as best as I could to hide my disgust and appear cool to them. They were obnoxious jerks, and yet somehow it was these boys who all of the girls flocked to. This showed me that the world was a brutal place and human beings were nothing more than savage animals. Everything my father taught me was proven wrong. He raised me to be polite, kind gentleman. In a decent world, that would be ideal. But the polite, kind gentleman doesn't win in the world. The girls don't flock to the gentleman. They flock to the alpha male. They flock to the boys who appear to have the most power and status. It was a ruthless struggle to reach such a height. It was too much for me to handle. I was a little boy with a fragile mind. Thinking about such things would only crush my innocence, and it would, and it eventually will, but not at this point. I subconsciously wanted to enjoy my childhood as much as I could, so I tried not to think about this new revelation and enjoy life in the moment. I put it aside to be pondered over later. My whole world had changed. The cool thing to do was be popular with girls. I didn't know how to go about doing that. Skateboarding, I was able to do. Dressing well, that was simple, but attracting attention from girls, how in the blazes was I going to do that? I didn't even understand what was so special about it either, but everyone seemed to place so much importance on it. This made me even more shy, and I became known as the shy new kid. Yeah, he was very uncomfortable with like puberty. Thankfully, some kids started reaching out to me, and I had a few chances to integrate with for a couple of weeks. The first boy to talk to me was Bryce. He, he asked me if I had any friends at school because he always saw me alone. I admitted that I had no friends. and he offered to be my first friend, and I was very grateful for this. Once again, I used skateboarding as a way to increase my standing, telling the skateboarder kids that I knew how to skateboard and that I could do some tricks. This got them to treat me more cordially. I even talked to Robert a few times, who I hated and yet subconsciously revered for being so popular. Wherever a so-called popular kid would say a word to me or give me a high five, whenever, or give me a high five, I felt immense satisfaction. Inevitably, I started to become known to the girls of my school, and surprisingly, they treated me quite well. It was a huge relief. Middle school would be the last time in my life where I wouldn't be completely invisible to girls. All the pretty girls had a peculiar habit of hugging boys they knew as a form of greeting, and some of them hugged me. I didn't understand why, but it felt like the best feeling ever. I was 100 times more satisfied from getting a hug from a pretty girl than getting a high five from a popular boy. It was a new experience that enraptured every fiber of my being. The seventh and eighth grade girls were especially kind to me. I guess I thought I was cute in a boyish sort of way. This made my initial experience at middle school so much better. What's funny is that I remember that. I remember like when the whole hugging thing was like a thing, because I remember I used to get picked up by my parents, and like the boys would give me hugs and my parents would be so mad. I did, I decided to attend the school dance in early October. A school dance was completely foreign to me. Elementary schools didn't have them, of course, and I only knew about them from watching typical American shows on television. I thought it was something I had to do in order to be cool. I was very nervous, but I pushed myself to go ahead with it. When I got there, Robert Morgan saw me and asked me if I wanted to hang out with his group. I was grateful for this, and I ended up having a nice time. I was shocked that some seventh and eighth grade girls offered to dance with me. They came up to me in a group and taught me how to slow dance. I had to place my hands on their hips while they placed their hands on my shoulders, and we would move slowly with the music. They were all taller than me, and I was terrified, but it felt so good. That would be the only time in my life where I would have a satisfying experience with girls. The only time. Halloween of this year marked the last time I would ever go trick or treating. After this, I would be too old for it. Mother took us to the Lemelsons, and I decided to not dress up in any costume. I went as myself, sporting my black Pinecrest sweater. As it was my last time trick or treating, it would be the last time I would have any sort of fun on Halloween. And I did have a lot of fun. It was nice to go out collecting candy with James and Noah, like we had been doing for the past several years. My father cut off a portion of the child support he had been paying my mother, which forced my mother to move house. We moved to a small blue house on Glade Avenue in Canoga Park. I didn't like Canoga Park at all. It was a very ugly and low-class area to the north or Hoodwin. Wait, it was a very ugly and low-class area to the north of Woodland Hills, and I felt it demeaning that we would have to live there during Mother's Week. The house did have some upsides. It had four bedrooms and a bigger living room than my mother's old house. My new room was a lot larger than my old one. And of course, my mother always had her own ways of making everything better. I would still enjoy my time at mother's small house more than the time at my father's big woodland house. Along with this move, there came a new change in our rotation schedule. My parents decided that we would stay at our mother's house for more instead of switching 1 week to 1 week. Mother would have us for all of the weekdays, and we would go to father's on the weekends when he was in town. Oh, wow. I have to sneeze. Me. He is also just that, a boy. He had no idea what adulthood could have brought him. I know. Around the same time that my mother moved, James' family moved as well to another Lemelson house owned in the Palisades. They would only remain in the house for a very brief period because a tragic event would soon occur in James' family. One day at school, I was sitting in my class when I was suddenly called to the office. My mother was there waiting to pick me up. I got into her car and the three of us drove out of school and parked on the side of Shoup Avenue. She told us the Dyers knew. James' mother, Kim, had just passed away from breast cancer. I cried for a bit. Kim was a very kind-hearted person. and mother of my best friend. She had been suffering from breast cancer for several years, but I never thought she would die from it. I immediately thought of how James must be feeling. He just lost his own mother. It made me think of how horrible I would feel if the same thing happened to my own mother. Just the thought alone filled me with pain. There was to be a get together of family and friends at James' house that night in honor of Kim. On the way, I thought about how I would approach James on the subject. The amount of grief he must be feeling. I couldn't even imagine it. The last similar experience was the death of my grandfather, and I was only 4 years old then. When we arrived, I looked for James and found him sitting in his room. I gently offered my deepest condolences for his loss. He remained very strong, obviously hiding his emotions. He looked very sad in an extremely stoic sort of way. He told me he fully accepted what had happened and that his mother was dead and that was the end of it. That was all we spoke on the matter. We tried not to think about it for the rest of the night, and later on, I played tag in his backyard with him and some of his friends. I remained very shy during my 6th grade year, and I would always be labeled as a quiet kid. I wasn't able to establish any friends that I could have playdates with, so the only playdates I had was with old friends from Topanga Elementary. This filled in the social void, and I was content with it. I tried my best to improve my social situation during school time. A few girls continued to pay attention to me, saying hi as I walked by them and occasionally giving me hugs, but I felt bitter at the fact that I wasn't able to truly hang out with them like the popular boys were doing. In order to not be seen as a complete loner at school, I ended up making friends with a kid named Connor. Connor was not a popular kid because girls didn't like him. Despite this, he was one of the most pompous assholes of the school, even more so than any of the popular boys. Connor was a true bully. I started hanging out with him during recess and lunch, and we both made a few jokes with each other and had a few good laughs, but he would always push me around and act tough. I was so timid back then that I didn't care. I just wanted someone to hang out with. When I stayed back after school one day, my mother saw me with Connor when she came to pick me up. She has been concerned about me not making any new friends at Pinecrest, and I suppose she was relieved to see me with a friend. She invited Connor to come over to my house, which he accepted. I was a bit hesitant to invite anyone from Pinecrest to my mother's house because it was located in Canoga Park, a bad area, and most of the kids at Pinecrest were upper middle class kids who would look down on me for living there. But I couldn't back out of this once my mother invited Connor. He came over and all went well. We played a few video games for a couple hours, but after that play date, he would always rip on me for living in the poorhouse. He would also tell the kids at Pinecrest about it. This infuriated me to no end, and I would keep proclaiming that my father lives in a prestigious 3-story house in Woodland Hills Heights. I became vehemently obsessed with proving to Connor and everyone that I wasn't poor. I went so far as to bring pictures of my father's house to school. I even considered inviting some of the people over to father's house, but I remembered my vow of never doing that due to the possibility that another incident would happen with Samaya, like the one that occurred years ago. Hey, William. It was at 11 years old when I first started using the internet on a regular basis. The internet was still considered a new phenomenon at the time. Before 11, I roughly knew how to browse websites and use email, but once I fully immersed myself in it, it really fascinated me. The popular social networking tool at that period was AOL Messenger or AIM. Who remembers AOL Messenger and AIM? That was my favorite. It's Elliot Rogers, William. Elliot Rogers was a shooter for he was responsible for the Isla Vista shootings. And we're going over his manifesto and his diary because it's deeply and dark and disturbing. I made my first AIM account on my mother's computer, and she would let me have 1 hour a day to explore it. I joined a few chat rooms. The prospect of talking to strangers from a computer was new and astounding to me. Ooh, I used to love chat rooms. I don't know how my parents I know, Evie. Evie says I met so many people through chat rooms, but, like, now looking back on it, I'm like, "Ooh, I don't know that they were good because I was doing, like, bad stuff on there." well, not bad stuff, but we were just wild. Insta chat was fun. Oh, I miss it. A lot of weirdos on those things too. That was my point exactly. Towards the end of 6th grade, I still hadn't made a group of friends who I could see outside of school. The only social interactions I had outside of school were playdates with old friends from Topanga every now and then. Joining chat rooms through AOL temporarily filled in the social void for a few weeks. This was definitely not the first time I would try to fill in that void with the internet. Once I established myself in the chat rooms, I made a few friends who I instant messaged frequently. Most of them were in middle school and some were in high school. I also talked to a few people who I knew from Pinecrest over AIM. One friend who I met through a chat room suddenly emailed me pictures of beautiful naked girls, telling me to check this out. When I looked at the pictures, I was shocked beyond words. I had never seen what beautiful girls look like naked, and the sight filled me with strong and overwhelming emotions. I didn't know what was happening to me. Was it the first inkling of sexual desire in my body? I was traumatized. My childhood was fading away. Omnibus fears swept over me, and I stopped talking to that person. As the 6th grade came to a close, I felt dissatisfied and insignificant. Indeed, a whole new world had opened up before me, and I had no idea how to prevail in it. I still wanted to live as a child. I never established any proper friends at Pinecrest, and the only play date I had was the one with Connor that my mom arranged, and that turned out to be a disaster for me. My mother and father both showed concern that I wasn't making any friends because I still saw some friends from Topanga. They didn't make a big deal out of it. I considered 6th grade to be the better year out of the 3 years I would spend in middle school. Girls actually paid attention to me. They knew who I was. I didn't feel like I was completely invisible. I was extremely shy with girls and could barely have a conversation with them, but I still interacted with girls more during this year than I would for any of the following years. The cool kids treated me nicely despite my reputation as a quiet kid. I always felt like a loser compared to them, and I hated them for it. Though I still wanted their approval, I wanted to be one of them. I wanted to be their friend. The closest I came to truly being one of them was when Vinny and Robert both invited me to their birthday parties, which were only a couple of weeks apart at the very end of the school year. Both parties were at Skate Lab skate park. I hadn't been to Skate Lab for about a year, and when I walked in, all of the memories going there with James filled my mind. I hadn't even skateboarded for a while, but after a few minutes on the ramps, my ability came back like magic. They were all quite impressed. I bet they thought I would end up sucking at it. I was happy to prove them wrong. Indeed, 6th grade was a peak of my life at Pinecrest. It would only go downhill from there. My mother bought me a brand new video game console, the Xbox. I heard a lot of kids talking about how great the Xbox was at school, so I was really eager to have one. I liked the Xbox much more than the PlayStation 2. The graphics were better and the games were more to my taste. With Xbox, I got the game Halo. At first, I found Halo to be very difficult, and I gave up on it a few times. I had no idea that Halo would soon become one of my favorite video games that I ever played. I was extremely happy and relieved when summer came. Middle school was much more stressful than elementary school, both socially and academically. Summer would provide a well needed break from all of it. I don't know if you guys can agree, but like my parents never tried to push me like go hang out here or like invite people over. Like they weren't like that. Like if I asked, then they might consider it, but they were never like the ones instigating it. Wanting approval from your peers sucks, but I think we all wanted that in one way or another. Yeah, it's human nature, right? I met friends. You did? Um, I started seeing some old friends from Topanga more frequently. Among these were John, Joe, and Charlie. Charlie wasn't really one of my main friends at Topanga. I had a few play dates with him here and there, but not that many. It was only until after 5th grade graduation that our friendship began. He always had a charming and humble personality, and he was well liked by everyone at Topanga. He came over to my mother's house a few times after I got my Xbox, where he tried to help me to get past the hardest level on Halo. John, Joe, and Charlie were very close friends with each other, and eventually I would start to see them as the same. John Joe invited me over to his father's apartment in Hollywood for a sleepover. I found his apartment to be very dingy, and I had so much fun that I didn't even care. He lived just across the street from the huge Scientology building. Ooh. We got together with a group of his friends and snuck into the building's courtyard at night to play hide and seek tag. This was the first time I had been having fun with a group of kids my age without any adult supervision. It was very amusing. When we went back to his apartment, we played *𝗠𝗲𝗵𝗆𝗆 Bad Fur Day on Nintendo 64. The Nintendo 64 was a very old console at this point in time, especially after I now had the Xbox and PS2. But I was entertained by the Conker's Bad Fur Day so much that I asked my mother to buy it for me the next day. I don't remember playing that on Nintendo 64. I don't think I know what that is. I'd have to look at it. My mom asked, all my mom asked was to meet my friends. Yeah. My mom was a teacher. She knew all my friends. James Ellis moved yet again to another house in the Palisades. After the death of his mother, James' father, Artie, quickly made the decision to move again. Artie rented a small house on Temecula Street near the renowned Palisades Bluffs. There they would remain for a long time, and all of the most significant experiences I would have with James in the future would take place there. At this time, though, I wasn't seeing James that much. We slowly drifted apart after we lost our common interest in skateboarding. We still considered each other friends, and we would still see each other occasionally, almost as a courtesy, but our friendship would be at a standstill during our middle school years. I was enjoying a lovely summer, but suddenly my mother said I had to go to summer camp at Pinecrest. This was a decision she made with my father because they thought it would be healthy for me. I didn't like this one bit. It was a last minute decision. One moment I was relaxing and enjoying my summer break, and next my mother is waking me up early to take me to my first day of camp at Pinecrest. Gratefully, summer camp only lasted 4 weeks. Summer camp at Pinecrest was located at the elementary section, and I recognized my old kindergarten class. It was a mix of middle school and elementary school kids, and I made a few friends with some kids who were younger than me. At this camp, an incident happened that would scar me for life. The first time I was treated badly by a girl occurred at this camp. I was innocently playing with the friends I made, and they were tickling me. Something people always did because I was very ticklish. I accidentally bumped into a pretty girl the same age as me, and she got very angry. She cursed at me and pushed me, embarrassing me in front of my friends. I didn't know who this girl was. She was only at Pinecrest for summer camp, but she was very pretty and she was taller than me. I immediately froze up and went to a state of shock. One of my friends asked me if I was okay. I didn't answer. I remained quiet for the rest of the day. I couldn't believe what had happened. Cruel treatment from women is 10 times worse than from men. It made me feel insignificant, unworthy. It made me feel like an insignificant, unworthy little mouse. I felt so small and vulnerable. I couldn't believe that this girl was so horrible to me. I thought it was because she viewed me as a loser. That was the first experience of female cruelty I endured, and it traumatized me to no end. It made me even more nervous around girls, and I would be extremely weary and cautious from that point on. Before summer camp ended, I saw that the same girl hanging out with Oren I saw the same girl hanging out with Oren a few times. Oren was one of the popular kids in my grade. I hated Oren so much when I saw him with her. It made me feel so inferior that this girl was mean to me, and yet she liked Oren. Thankfully, Oren wouldn't be returning to Pinecrest for seventh grade, and I would never see him again. I wonder what became of him. I bet he lived a good life. I felt relieved when summer camp ended. That experience with the mean girl ruined it for me. Hell, it ruined part of my life. Whenever I think about summer camp, I would think about that girl and my emotions would flare up. My 12th birthday followed. I decided not to do anything for it. My mother took me and my sister out to a Japanese restaurant to celebrate it. 12 seemed like a big number to me back then. One more year and I would be a teenager. It was hard to believe. I remember that when it was such a big deal when I would be like, I'm going to be 13. I'm going to be a teenager. Um 12 years old. For the rest of summer, I resumed my routine of relaxing and having play dates. I tried to forget about what happened at summer camp as much as I could. John Joe came over to my house where he slept over for the first time. We played a few video games, and then he told me he wanted to take me to a place called Planet Cyber, a cyber cafe that had all of the best online PC games. I knew nothing of the sort, but it was just down the street from my mother's house. I walked there with him, eager to experience something new. This was my first experience with online gaming. Playing video games with people over the internet invoked a whole new level of fascination to me. Talking to people over AIM was fun and new, but this was tremendous. I always loved playing multiplayer mode on video games when I had friends over. With online gaming, I could do it whenever I want. I was a novice to these new games on the PC, but I got the hang of it after playing with John Joe for a few hours. The games we played were Day of Defeat and Counter Strike. Mother took me and Georgia on two little vacation trips in the same week. For the first trip, we went to Long Beach, where we stayed at the Hyatt Hotel. It reminded me of our little trip to Ventura 2 years previously. We visited the harbor and the aquarium. The three of us really bonded on this trip. We went home for a couple of days before going on the second trip. For the second trip, we went to Legoland and stayed at the resort there. The resort was exceedingly beautiful with a huge swimming pool and spa. We met up with with a family of one of Georgia's friends and explored the entirety of Legoland. When we got home from our marvelous trip, I had another sleepover with John Joe. He loved the fact that I lived near Planet Cyber, so he would soon be calling every week asking to come over. I saw Charlie a few days later. Charlie was also familiar with Planet Cyber, and when the two of us went there, he introduced me to an RPG game called Diablo 2. I didn't know what to make of this game. It was like an adventure game similar to Banjo-Kazooie and Donkey Kong, but much more mature with the ability to interact with online players. It was only a matter of time before I started inviting John Joe and Charlie to sleep over at the same time. When the three of us went to Planet Cyber as a group, I had an absolute blast. It was one of the best experiences of my life. I do like Diablo. Hey, Anton. Remember the three-way calling too? Oh my gosh. This whole manifesto makes me like the Pogs, the Pokemon, the Nintendo 64, the Donkey Kong. Like it was a lot of my childhood. At father's house, father would frequently invite his new friend Alexander over. Alex was a boisterous German man who worked as a composer and lived in the top of Topanga community. Alex had a son named Lucas, who was only a couple years younger than Georgia. Lucas was a very girly and immature little boy, but I found him to be very amusing. They would come over almost every weekend that I was at father's, and it became a big part of my life there. Seventh grade began. My coveted summer break was all over. On the first day, I noticed some people I met during camp start school there as sixth graders. One of them was Patrick, the younger brother of Alex. I would always view Patrick as an obnoxious, rude lout. He was very ugly too, and it annoyed me that he carried himself around as if he wasn't a freckled, chubby-faced imbecile. I said hello to everyone I knew from last year, including Robert and his clique of popular kids. There was also a flock of new kids who transferred from the Pinecrest. I was soon to meet them. Among these were Alfred and Anthony, Derek, Garrett, and Edward. They already knew each other and always hung out together at the start of the year, but I soon noticed that each of them soon integrated into already pre-established cliques at Pinecrest. I was jealous that Johnny an obnoxious Mexican kid immediately became popular with the skateboarders because of his cocky attitude. Alfred, a half Black boy whom I've had a semi friendship with throughout the years, was intensely disliked by everyone, mainly because he was ugly and had a habit of intentionally annoying people. He would eventually become friends with the skateboarders, however, due to his interest in this due to the interest in the sport. My reputation as a shy kid continued, and I still didn't make any friends who I became close enough to see outside of school. I did socialize with various groups during school hours, so I wasn't a complete outcast during seventh grade. James Ellis started middle school at Paul Revere Middle School as a sixth grader. Though he's the same age as I am, he was held back a year in elementary school. Coincidentally, he went to the same school as John Joe, Charlie, and a few others from Topanga. After this point, I would stop seeing James Ellis for a while. Our friendship became temporarily stale and would remain so for another year. The only time we saw each other during this period was when we had family get togethers. James' sister Sage often came over to play with Georgia, while James didn't bother to come at all. John, Joe, and Charlie started to come over every Friday. This would soon become a tradition. Fridays were always my favorite time of the week, and this tradition made me look forward to Fridays with intense eagerness. They would always be dropped off by their parents shortly after school time, and then we would walk to the Planet Cyber and play games for hours. After a few of these Friday sleepovers, Charlie introduced me to his friend Elijah. Elijah was temporarily staying at Charlie's house, and the two of them were like brothers. I immediately took a great liking to Elijah, and we became instant friends. He helped me beat some of the hardest levels of Halo. Elijah would then soon come over with Charlie and John Joe, and the four of us became a close group of friends. This was the only true social group I would ever have, and I had a great time with them. We sometimes hung out at Planet Cyber until 3 in the morning, the latest I had ever been out without parent supervision. Damn, that's late for being that young. I could never. I could never be out. Oh, I love Pulp Fiction. I could never be out at 3 in the morning at that age. The heck? we would switch be we would switch between playing Halo at my house, playing games at Planet Cyber, or skateboarding around the neighborhood. I briefly got back into skateboarding for the sake of enjoying it with these friends. On the following Saturday morning, we would always wake up by 9, have breakfast at Krispy Kreme, and spend a few more hours at Planet Cyber before my friends were picked up by their parents. I would then go to Father's house for the weekend if Father was in town. My sister Georgia's birthday was in November, and on that day, my father hired a limo to pick up Georgia and her friends from Mother's house. Charlie and Elijah came over, though Joe John was absent that day. When the limo returned, we all celebrated Georgia's birthday at the house together. I introduced father to my friends. It was a very happy experience. When the winter break finally arrived, my grandma Amma came over from England to visit, and she stayed in the fourth bedroom at Mother's house. Amma is just like my mother. She always knew what I liked and went out of her way to get it for me, just to put a smile on my face. She brought with her some of my favorite English chocolates, along with her famous peanut butter cookies that I love so much. Mother had a party at her house, and a lot of family friends came over, including Maddie and her mom, James and his family, Philip and Jeffrey, and a lot of Mother's old friends who I hadn't seen for a long time. Amma, who is a professional cook, made some of her special dishes, and we set up a bouncy castle in our backyard. I even invited Joe John, Charlie, and Elijah over, and we walked to Planet Cyber for a little bit, then walked back and had some fun on the bouncy castle. James really never liked my group of friends. He told me he thought they were jerks. I suppose he was right about John Joe, but Charlie and Elijah were always nice people. Oh well, I never really liked James' friends either, so that made us even, I guess. I had a great time during this party. James and Maddie were the last ones to leave. Me and my sister played with them for a while on the bouncy castle. It made for an interesting and peculiar experience, playing with both James and Maddie at the same time, my two oldest friends. It had been a long time since I had seen Maddie, and it would be the last time we would ever play together as friends. Before the night was over, we all took pictures together outside my mother's front door. James made a funny face for it, while I stood behind them, awkwardly waving my hand. To this very day, my mother still has that picture in one of her photo albums. One time, when John Joe and Charlie and Elijah came over for our traditional Friday night sleepover, we met up with Armando and his younger brother, Gus. I hadn't seen them since Topanga Elementary School. We had a good time skateboarding with them at the church parking lot near Mother's house and all over that area. Afterwards, we had some video game competitions at Planet Cyber. My mother took me to watch Lord of the Rings, Return of the King in the movie theaters. I already saw the first two movies, but I wasn't a huge fan of the series until I saw this third one in the movie theaters. Watching that movie in the theaters was an epic experience, and I will always remember it. Though it wasn't as exciting as going to the red carpet premieres of Star Wars prequels, it came quite close. After the movie, Mother and I ate dinner at TGI Fridays. When we got home, I was getting ready for bed. I heard a knock on the door. It was Elijah asking if I wanted to go with him to Planet Cyber, which I did for a few hours. That day marked the last time I would ever go to the movie theaters with my mother, except for premieres. Growing up, I always loved when my parents took me to the movies. The large screen and the loud sound immersed me into the movie, and I felt I liked that dizzy feeling that I would feel when I walked out of the movie and entered back into the real world. It was always a remarkable experience. Soon enough, the movie theaters were turned from a place of joy to a place of dread. Once puberty arrives, I would start getting jealous of all the young couples or groups of boys and girls who would go to the movies together. That day I saw the final Lord of the Rings movie was the last time that last day I saw the final Lord of the Rings movie was the last time I enjoyed movie theaters in peace without fear of humiliation. That was also like a big deal too. We would do movies all the time. Rogers was insane. Yeah, he is. I know. My parents would have kicked my ass. Me too, Anton. Aside from Fridays, I always met with a group of friends at Planet Cyber on Wednesdays because they were charging only $1 per hour on Wednesdays. Usually, my mother wouldn't let me play video games for such a long time on a weekday, but she made an exception for Wednesdays. On one such Wednesday, Charlie introduced me to the game Warcraft 3. It was like no game I ever played before. It enabled the player to build an army and battle against other players online. After the first round of Warcraft 3, going up against John Joe and Charlie, I was captivated. The game was so much fun. I couldn't help but think about it every second for the next 2 days. When the following Friday arrived, we played it for most of the day and well into the night. My initial happy interest in the game Warcraft 3 had an ominous tone to it. This was the beginning of a long relationship with the Warcraft franchise. And less than a year from that point, they would release their ultimate game, World of Warcraft, a game that would find sanctuary in for the most of my teenage years. This is the game he was obsessed about. What is he talking about though? Because he was alone at the theater? Yeah, I think so. Seventh grade flew by very fast. My school life was a continuation of sixth grade. I mingled with acquaintances here and there and behaved nicely with everyone. The difference is that I was having so much fun outside of school with my friends at Planet Cyber that I didn't really care about getting popular at school or getting attention from girls. I was enjoying my very last year of childhood. My 12th year was one of the best years of my life, and the last year I was happy. I'm glad that I can at least say I made the best of it. I gave no thought at all to my future or the fact that puberty was just around the corner. I barely even knew much about what puberty was. With puberty, my whole world would change and my entire life would collapse in utter despair. I wonder how I would have handled things if I knew, if I was prepared. The summer was long awaited. I was having the time of my life, and once school was out, I couldn't wait to spend the summer relaxing and doing fun things. I was relieved that neither of my parents made me attend summer camp. I suppose I had gotten too old for it. The summer was mine to enjoy however I wanted. It was like a coveted treasure that I only hold on to for a few moments, but those moments would last forever in memory. It was my last summer before puberty, my last summer of innocence, my last summer of true happiness and satisfaction with life. I continued my traditional Friday sleepovers with Charlie, John, Joe, and Elijah. Because there was no more school, they would sometimes come over on other days as well. I managed to beat the entire game of Halo on legendary mode with Elijah's help, an impressive feat. Philip and Jeffrey came over quite a lot as well. Philip was always a mature and insightful brother, while Jeffrey was a wild and funny one. Seeing the two of them together always made for an interesting and excitable mix. Their mother, Kathy, brought them over on the weekdays quite often. We drank a lot of soda, ate a lot of candy, and played with scooters and skateboards around my mother's neighborhood. I took them to Planet Cyber one time and showed them some of the games there. On the weekends I spent at Father's, we usually did something with the Bubbenheims. They lived in the top of Topanga community, which we often spent afternoons. I played with Georgia and Lucas in the swimming pool there, and being one who admires great views, I spent a lot of time looking out at the valley. Going to that place would always remind me of my fifth grade graduation party, a good memory. Samaya told us extraordinary news. On one Sunday afternoon at Father's, me and my sister were asked to come out into the dining room for a special announcement. It wasn't announced by words, but by Samaya indicating us to feel her stomach. She was pregnant. She and my father were having their first baby together. I was going to have a baby brother. I felt elated. I remember when I was a bit younger, I always asked my father and Samaya if they were going to have a baby, and they said they would like to. I still felt surprised and was actually confirmed. It was that warm feeling that would envelop me when a good change happened in my life. I had no idea what it would be like, but I welcomed it. My stepmother, Khadija, came to stay with us for a second time, mainly to help Samaya prepare for birth. Um, hey, Kim. Kimmy, good to see you. In the middle of summer, mother took me and my sister on vacation to Malaysia. This was the first time we would go on an overseas vacation with just my mother, and I was pleased at the thought of it. We took off on my 13th birthday. I spent my 13th birthday on an airplane, a much more exciting birthday than the previous few. We traveled to Singapore, we traveled on Singapore Airlines, and though we weren't for traveling first class on this trip, I found it to be just as comfortable. The staff of Singapore Airlines knew it was my birthday and they brought me a cake with a candle during the middle of the flight. It was a very nice gesture. We had spent 8 hours at the Singapore airport. I thought airport was such a pleasant place that I really enjoyed spending time there. It was all part of the vacation experience. The airport was huge and much more entertaining than LAX or any or any airport in Europe that I have been to. The three of us walked around and explored, went shopping, and visited the common areas and had a nice meal at one of the restaurants. There were a lot of foreign candies and sodas that I was curious to try. Traveling with just mother and sister was a lot less stressful than traveling with father and Samaya. It was wonderful. When we arrived in Malaysia, we met up with Grandma Amma and my sister's mother, Min, and her husband, Jack, and cousin Emma. They were also visiting from Malaysia from England. We all stayed at the tall hotel building near the beach. After we unpacked everything at the hotel, some of my mother's relatives who lived in Malaysia came to see us. We had a birthday celebration for me at the hotel that night. Before I went to sleep, I pondered over the fact that I was now a teenager. I had a lovely time on this vacation. Our hotel suite was one of the highest floors of the building, and it had an exquisite deck that provided a view of the ocean. During the trip, we toured around the island of Penang, visited Georgetown, went to a fun water park, and had very delicious meals at many exotic restaurants. Just relaxing and watching movies at the hotel was a joy in itself. The vacation was so nice that I didn't even miss my life at home. The 3 weeks flew by very fast, and I cried a little when it was over. It was good sadness. I celebrated my birthday again at my father's house on the night we returned to America. I was allowed to have my very first glass of beer for this celebration. I always thought of alcoholic drinks such as beer and wine as mysterious drinks that were forbidden to children like myself. Father would let me only have a small sip of wine from time to time. Having my first glass of beer felt like a big honor. That's wild. My first present, I got my first cell phone. During this era, cell phones were like a rite of passage for kids my age. I always envied the kids who had a cell phone. John Joe had a silver Sprint phone with the green lighting that I always coveted. To finally have a cell phone of my own made me feel so proud. My phone was a silver T-Mobile phone with blue lighting. I loved the satisfaction I felt when I opened it and saw the pretty lights. That's funny because that's what I think mine was too. And I got my phone at 13 too. We're gonna stop there on reading this article. We start with his teenage years. I'll definitely have to schedule another live for this. We have Kenzie live scheduled after this. We have two Kenzie live scheduled, but I kind of want to do an after dark, so or a hangout. So we'll see. We'll see. But I will definitely there is now a playlist for Elliot Rodgers as we go through the case in the documents. We're gonna read the manifesto, this and we're gonna read the some of the investigation reports, and then we are gonna get into his diary. So, like I said, I have started a playlist for this case. You can check out the playlist. Lots of good stuff there. Oh, sorry. Let me fix my screens. Um, Thank you, Melly. Thank you guys for being here. Shout out to you guys. I know it's a little slow at first, but it's just because he's taking us through his whole life, but it gets really good. So, like I said, I will schedule the next live for this reading tomorrow. And I will see you guys on the next live. We have Kenzie, all kinds of stuff. So definitely please hit the like button too, guys. It really does help. I know I'm going to keep repeating myself on that because it's necessary to get into the algorithm and push the channel out. So please hit the like button on the way out, and I will see you guys shortly on the next live.